Okay, so let's start with the fact that I became familiar with you through Instagram, through a podcast. It just kind of like a clip came by as I was scrolling. And this is the whole idea and the power of just putting yourself out there. And if you do it over and over, kind of being a bulldog with it, magic really starts to happen. You start to see doors open, you start to get familiar with other people. And now here we are today talking.
Yeah, and I appreciate you having me on. So yeah, that I probably started out on Instagram about a year ago. I knew I had a story to tell, and I was trying to figure out the best method to do that. So what I believe in is kind of going through every door that's open and seeing where they go. And on social media, it started slow, but I knew you kind of have to build a brand. So I probably posted for 7 months, but then, and we'll get into more of my story, but I was on the way to my prison sentencing, actually. I was facing 7 years in prison. And I said, you know what? I've been documenting my whole journey. Why not make a video in the airport on the way to my sentencing just to, document my story? And that's the first video that took off. I think everyone was like, what's going to happen to this guy? Are we ever going to see him again? Is he going to be in prison? So that's kind of where things took off. Is my account's just always been being real, being raw, being vulnerable. And it seems like most people just put a highlight reel out there, but I'm putting out, I'm on the way to prison, or talking about my drug dealer living with me and all that. So I think that just resonated with people a little bit.
It's such an interesting story. I think people look at you because this happened to me too. And I was like, well, he looks like pretty straight and narrow. So to hear that you lived with a drug dealer and you dated a stripper and you were, a cocaine addict and a drug addict is kind of shocking, especially since you had like that whole finance lifestyle. Like that's what I would think of you as, is like, like a financial guy. Like that's and now don't judge a book by its cover, but that's sort of how, by first glance. And the fact that you had a prison sentence, people are probably like, whoa, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean that's what I hear all the time. People tell me I look like like your everyday neighbor accountant or something like that. So kind of goes to show mental illness doesn't discriminate. Anyone can get involved in crime. So I mean, and yeah, I was, if you look at my early life before my bipolar episode started, I was, that guy that you would think, financial advisor, straight and narrow by the book. So all of it changed when I had my first bipolar manic episode.
I want to talk about that. So as I mentioned, I read your book and I loved it. I read it in just a couple of days. Here it is. I'm going to do a little shout out for you, Manic in Miami. This is something everybody should read. You don't have to suffer from mental health issues, which I myself do, but you don't have to suffer from it. It's just, listen, you drag them in with like the wild, drug fueled, crazy stories, but there's a really powerful message in this as well. And so it's a book I love. It's Manic in Miami, Bipolar Guy Living Life, and it's an Amazon bestseller right now. So congratulations
Thank
from
you.
that. But who have not yet read the book, can you sort of break down like really impactful moments in your life that took you from here to there, or
Yeah.
there to here?
Yeah, that's what I think we can start. Probably the best way to start is when I was 20 years old, I had my first major depressive episode. I was in college. I was actually in Bible college at the time, studying to be a minister, ironically, which, if you hear the rest of my story, does not, go along with that. But yeah, with my first depressive episode, it came out of nowhere. There was no catalyst. There was really nothing in my life, that I could see that was causing it. But I went from being a straight A student to starting to fail my classes, didn't want to get out of bed, anxiety. And it was very scary, because I never had it before and I had no idea how long it would last. And, this first episode lasted a couple months. I did go to the doctor during that time. They gave me, I think it was Prozac. But I got really bad side effects from the medication. So I stopped taking it after a few days. But that was my very first bipolar episode. At the time, they just thought I was depressed because I didn't have any manic symptoms. And that's what happens with a lot of us bipolar people, is we get diagnosed with depression because, we're going to the doctor typically when we're depressed. But yeah, that was my first depressive episode. Then I had a couple more minor depressive and manic episodes that we can kind of skip over for sake of time. So when I was 21, though, I did get married to my college sweetheart. So it was our both of our firsts on our wedding night. So like I said, very religious, background. But then everything in my life kind of blew up when I turned 26 years old, because that's when I had my very first manic episode. And mania is basically, that's why it's bipolar. It's the polar opposite of depression. I got all this crazy extra energy out of nowhere. I didn't need sleep. I became kind of like I'm more of an introvert normally, but I became extremely confident, grandiose thinking. And with that also, one thing a lot of people, don't talk about with bipolar is your sex drive can just, shoot through the roof. And you have a lot of reckless, impulsive thoughts and then behaviors, that follow that. And that's probably when I made my biggest mistake. I ended up cheating on my ex-wife, with the girl at my work. And then basically went home the next day and told her that I did that because I was manic. I hate to say it, but I didn't have any remorse at the time. I had a ton of shame and remorse later, but it was like this total hedonistic, pleasure-seeking desire and behavior that followed. So I didn't drink at the time. Like I said, I was, straight and narrow type kid, but I started going out 6, 7 nights a week now and partying. And honestly, like my friends, my family, no one could recognize me at that. Became a different person.
Did you know? I guess this is the question because celebrities have been open about their bipolar diagnosis.
Yeah.
People have friends maybe who've been open. I have a friend's father who went through it or goes through it still. But I guess the question is, and what seems so confusing to like an average or normie person, whatever, is like, do you know that you're going through a manic episode? Does it seem like it's not reality?
Yeah, I
Or
didn't, especially at this time, I didn't even know what mania was. So yeah, the way I describe mania is it's really fun at first until it's not. Because at first, like I said, you have this energy, you have this confidence, you feel like you're kind of like at the top of the world, and you can do anything and be anyone. I mean, at first I was crushing it at work because of my extra confidence. So you don't really know it at first a lot of times. I would say sometimes as you progress in your bipolar, you can start to realize mania is coming on, but definitely at first you have no idea. And I think it depends on the person. Some people seem to not ever know they're going into a manic episode, but sometimes you can honestly. There have been times where I could kind of tell I was going into it, but then it just comes and you can't do anything about it.
And because you're on top of the world, it's almost, I imagine, like taking like a superhuman pill. You like don't want to get rid of those feelings either. Like, why
Yeah, that's
would you
why no one
get
really
stuck
goes
in?
to the doctor when they're manic for the most part. Like I said, it's really fun until it's not. So you're not going to the doctor when you're on top of the world. You're going to the doctor when you're depressed.
That's right. And moving forward, I mean, I lost the page here because I had them all dog-eared,
Oh
but
no.
there was a point. I myself suffer from really extreme bouts of anxiety and depression, and it's like all first thing I do is go to my meds. Like, what's wrong? Are my meds not working? But there's a lot of sort of daily rituals I also have to help me get through those moments to get to a healthier place. And one of the things you said in your book when you started getting healthy was you it's like people might in the outside world might not realize how important staying balanced is by sleep, diet, so nutrition,
Mhm.
saying no to things, like really being knowing your own body so well and being so in tune that you don't allow yourself to kind of go to those places like darker spots. So will you talk to me about the importance of that and
Yeah,
what
I
that looks
call
like
it.
for you?
I guess I call it building self-awareness is one of the most important thing for anyone in general, but I mean for people with mental illness, I think building self-awareness is so important. So really knowing your body, like you were talking about, really the habits that people that don't have mental illness have. It's almost doubly important for us with mental illness to follow those. Lack of sleep can easily lead to a manic episode. So, getting proper sleep, diet, exercise. Another big one is stress, like managing stress. With the mental illness, you really got to protect your peace and be very careful about letting too much stress in your life. So that and so many other things are just really important. I've just learned. I've learned over the years, as going through all these episodes, I just start to realize when one might be coming, and being able to contact a doctor is really important. Having safeguards in place too, with like educating family and friends and people to know when it looks like an episode's coming, and them being able to help you and step in. Like all those things are really important, I think.
And I appreciate you being so honest about this. And you talk about it in the book too. So it's not like I'm, reaching or talking about anything too personal. I hope I'm not. And
No,
if
you
I
can talk.
am,
You can talk about anything. I'm an open book.
okay, that's like me. It's like hit him, get below the belt is better. I'm totally
Yeah.
ready to answer. But I'm just curious if, like, it does seem like people who suffer from bipolar as well, or have that diagnosis, sometimes they don't want to take the medication. How has that impacted your life? Does it keep you balanced? Do you still have any of these moments of highs and lows?
So, yeah, I've been on the same medication for over 7 years now. And I'm on a mood stabilizer, and then like it's a medicine that has like depression and help with sleep, antidepressant and anti-sleep qualities. But yeah, so a lot of people when they're bipolar, when they feel better, they come off their meds. That's a common thing, and then they go back into episodes. Because I've had such bad episodes, which we can, yeah, get into. When you've gone through enough stuff, you don't want to go through anything again. So I want to stay on my medication, I think, for forever. It's not perfect. There are still like minor side effects. And
What
then
are they?
getting to these medications, I had quite the journey. It took years to of trial and error to find the right medications. A lot of them had side effects, that turned me into a zombie or shell of myself, or nausea, vomiting, all sorts of things. So it took years to find the right medications that I still have grogginess in the morning and certain things, but they're manageable, and they're a lot better than like blowing up my life, over and over again.
I feel the same thing. And speaking of blowing up your life, so what draws me into books, and I think many people for that matter, is kind of like the horror stories of the excess wild nights that we talked about and the drug abuse. And there is real redemption here, and we're going to get into that, which we've talked about because look at you today. However, I want to get into sort of the moments that were the darkest. And if you still, Ciroc Poppy, your drug dealer, you moved him in with you. You were dating a woman. Not that there's anything wrong with stripping, by the way, but like
No.
you were dating a stripper, which a little bit different from the woman you were married to before, who you met in
Yes.
Bible college.
Yes.
So I kind of want to know if you keep in touch with these people and just like maybe tell the viewers sort of some of the stories.
Okay. I think where we can start, there's so many
How vague
stories.
is that? How vague is that?
No, I mean, there's so many stories. I can't get into all of them today. That's what the book's for. But I'd say where we can probably start to kind of keep everything cohesive is so after my manic episode where I cheated on my ex, kind of what happened next is I can tell a few stories to kind of explain how the mania gets. So not long after that, like a couple months later, I meet this foreign nanny or au pair and fall in love with her like while I'm still married. And she doesn't know, that I'm still married. But in my manic mind, I think I can get married to her too, because I find out she is going to have to go back to Mexico if I don't marry her. So I figure I can get divorced in time to marry the second person. I practice my Spanish, go to Mexico in broken Spanish. I ask permission from her mom, get that. We're ring shopping while I'm still married. And then, yeah, I got hit with another major depressive episode after that. And that kind of shut that whole thing down because that was probably the darkest part of my life where I almost ended my life. and ended up in a mental hospital for 4 or 5, I think it was 5 days. But that's where I thankfully was diagnosed bipolar for the first time. So that I was relieved to get that diagnosis, but then we were still struggling with the medications. So I get out of there. The medication, the depression medication helps, but the manic episode made me feel like a zombie, like a walking zombie. So I stopped taking it, and then that's where my mania just took off. And during the next manic episode, started using drugs. I became a coke addict first. That was my drug of choice. And then I got involved in white collar crime through some party friends. And basically we were doing, pharmaceutical sales or healthcare fraud against the government insurance, TRICARE, with compounding creams. The creams were billing out, crazy amounts of money to the government. So I quit my finance job because I was making so much money doing, I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars with the creams. And yeah, that went on for about a year. And then until May of 2015, that's really when my life changed. Because in May of 2015, the FBI raided my company's office. And yeah, that you asked about lows, that was definitely a low. When I was doing all this, I never looked into the consequences of the crime or anything like that. I wasn't trying to save money. I wasn't, I didn't want to buy anything nice. I just wanted to party. So I'm using all the money to go to Miami, Vegas, wherever, and just get VIP bottle service and, go to strip clubs during day shift, night shift, whatever, because we didn't really work. And that's all I was using my money on. So it was just blowing through it to party. But after the FBI raided my office, I found out I was facing, up to 7 years in prison. So as you can probably guess, I fell right into a depressive episode again, at that time. Then from there, so that depressive episode didn't last very long because I ended up going to Vegas to try to kick my depression. That's that story. I ended up doing 12 nights in Vegas, which, I almost died. I ended up in the hospital. My friends went home after the fourth day, so I was literally by myself in Vegas, which is dangerous.
Very dangerous. I'm the only person who stayed 4 nights there just recently, and I'm like, I want more. But I'm very tame. But that
Right.
is a super dangerous place to be. Yeah.
Especially when I wasn't, all I was doing there was partying, like pool parties and nightclubs. I wasn't doing the chill stuff. So
Of course.
I was buying like an 8 ball a day and sharing with myself and all my new friends. But yeah, I could have died there, but I didn't, luckily. But I kicked my depression, back into another manic episode. And that's where, things just kept getting worse and worse. My lawyer had told me, slow down. You're facing 7 years. Stop partying, stop doing all this. But, being manic, you don't really listen to your lawyers or your family or anyone else. So I ended up moving to Austin from Florida. And then that's when I met my stripper ex-girlfriend first. And about
Remind
that
me the
same
name.
time, I also bought an after hours nightclub. So, instead of keeping a low profile, now I own this after hours nightclub. And, things are just spiraling worse and worse because all I'm doing is partying in my own club.
Do you keep in touch with the stripper?
No, I don't. But what a lot of
It's just
people think is
weird that
crazy.
yeah,
What's that?
that story was just so wild to me.
Yeah.
You were so in love with her. And like looking back, is it real love? Was it?
I think
Do you think?
so. Because so when I met her, I was manic, and I didn't know if she really loved me because I had a lot of money, from the
Yeah.
crime and stuff, and a club. So I didn't know what her intentions were, if she was really, with me for the right reasons. But we ended up dating 4 years, and she stayed with me through the highs and the lows. But yeah, being manic when I met her, I talk about it in the book. I remember she pointed down to her ankle monitor because I couldn't buy her a drink, and that was that was like love at first sight for me for
Right
whatever
there.
reason.
That's a match.
I found my match. I was like, all right, this person, even though they have an ankle monitor, they can keep up with me. She was still doing drugs and she'd roofie herself with GHB. So she without drinking, she could still party pretty hard.
So how it's not that it's brushed over in the book, but you take a sort of sharp turn from
Mm.
all of this into just flushing your cocaine down the toilet one day. And I'm just curious how I was waiting for some like horrible rehab story where you're shaking in bed and sweats and all of that. But it didn't really it sounded like you were kind of able to just let go of the drug abuse, like almost instantly. Is that true?
Yeah, because so we can jump there real quick. So yeah, I was able to when I finally got stabilized on the right meds, my addiction kind of went hand in hand with my bipolar. So my
Got
coke
it.
addiction went hand in hand with that. So when I was able to get on the right meds, I didn't have the desire to do it anymore. So it's very different than most people's stories. But yeah, back when I was manic, totally different story. I get why you would think that because I was, after I think the next part to talk about is I moved my dealer, Ciroc Poppy. That's Ciroc
Who likes
Poppy.
apple Ciroc? Like
Yeah.
literally, because it was several years ago, and I'm like, oh, the saying it over and over in the book, I was like, "Bleh." So love it.
Do you like any flavor of Ciroc?
No, I mean Ciroc is well, maybe we shouldn't talk about Ciroc now, right? Isn't Ciroc Diddy's company?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, probably should. But no, so the answer is no. I hate Ciroc. I hate Ciroc. But no, I'm like a clean alcohol drinker. Just if I'm
No,
gonna have
that's
vodka,
fair.
it's
I don't,
vodka.
yeah, I think back then it was kind of, so this is all happening in 2015, 2016. So I think back then it was kind of a big
Yeah,
drink. I was
yeah.
already drinking like pineapple and peach Ciroc before I met Ciroc Poppy, but he introduced me to apple Ciroc. And yeah, it was weird. We hit it off right away. I mean, and he sold me stuff. Then we partied together all day. He spent the night in my spare bedroom. He basically never left. We just kept partying the whole week. At the regular bars and then at my club, it was after hours club during the weekend. So yeah, he moved into my spare bedroom. So I've got the dancer, myself, and Ciroc Poppy in my spare bedroom, which is very dangerous to have for an addict to have drugs a few feet away instead of a phone call away. That just accelerates our demise. So
Oh my, I,
yeah,
I can't imagine. And I just have to put it in one more time because people will, jump down my throat. And again, I actually think if you're empowered and you want to be a stripper and it feels good and that's what you want to do, by all means, that is a profession. And those girls work their butts off.
yeah,
So I don't want it to sound like I'm talking down about strippers at all. I think you said it better when you said dancer or entertainer or whatever. So
yeah.
that is an absolutely perfectly good career if that's what you want to do. It was more a matter of you went from the Bible, the Bible college with your wife to that just felt like a big difference. That's
Oh,
all
it's
I'm
a
saying.
big difference. Yeah, and the I guess the part about the story that's really cool, speaking of dancers, is this girl was probably the most loyal girlfriend or like right at the top, the most loyal girls I could have ever dated. She stayed with me through all my highs and lows. So I still have a lot of love in my heart for her. So yeah, it doesn't matter what profession. There's great people, great hearts, out there. But
I
yeah, the
wanted,
story
yeah,
itself makes it funny.
I want to talk to you about your acceptance of your parents. I think that's a really important point that we should just, touch on for a second.
Mhm.
Our parents are not always heroic. They don't always treat us the best. They don't always make the best decisions because they're human and they don't know, right? So I've let my own issues with my own mom stuff, slide at this point.
Mhm.
I guess you've kind of made it clear that your parents, you're only so close to them. This is your stepdad and your mom,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
You can only get so close to them because you're
Mhm.
very different people and they were so strict with you when you were growing up.
Right.
What is that? Why is it important for you to have acceptance in that? And do you still?
I do still. I the way I see it, I guess, is although my parents were very strict and I really, did have my issues with them, I do believe that they cared about me and they do love me in their own unique way. And they were there for me through some of these. They tried to be there for me through my mania. I didn't let them. They were there for me later
Right.
so after this, spoiler alert, I lost everything. Obviously, it's just obviously not a surprise. But they were there for me, after that. And I guess the thing I realized is, I could have an imperfect relationship with them or none at all, and I choose to look at the good and try to have the best relationship I can with them, even if it's not always ideal. Maybe I romanticized other people's relationships with their parents, but at the end of the day, we don't get to choose our family, and I do want a relationship with them.
How does a day in the life look like for you today? Going from, again, like here's the overarching themes are like growing up very strict religious household, bipolar becomes super present in your life. It's like something you have to deal with. The drug and alcohol or drug addiction, losing it all, having this awful court case over your head because it
Mhm.
was white collar fraud, and then sort of the redemption, serious redemption. You
Yeah.
writing a book, you becoming a public speaker or working on that, interviews. Talk to me about sort of how your life looks today from like kind of top to bottom.
Yeah, and just real quick to kind of put a bookend on what we are talking about earlier to make sure everyone knows. So after to end the club, all that whole situation, I kept falling lower and lower. Ended up running the nightclub into the ground. I lost everything, and became homeless. And I thought my girlfriend, would leave me at the time, but we're living out of cheap motels. She's taking care of us basically. I'm depressed again. Couldn't get a job forever. Bombed like 20 job interviews. From there we finally get a small studio apartment and slowly rebuilt our lives. That's when I was able to get on the right meds and finally start working my way back up from there. So I think first of all, to answer your question, I think I needed the meds first of all to at least I call it at least get me like 50% of the way there. So the meds, were a big start for me. Really then from there, I just had to I had to really put in a lot of work. Especially mentally, it was hard. Basically, all of my 30s, I had this court case hanging over my head. Um, the FBI raided my office in May of 2015, and it didn't get resolved till 9.5 years later. So,
That was so terrible. That part of the story kills me.
yeah,
Just living in limbo has got to be so exhausting mentally.
it was that. I mean, every day of your life, kind of having that hang over your head is, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Correct.
It's definitely difficult. And yeah, it was the longest case my lawyer has ever been a part of, as a federal case. There was just so many things that happened with the case. There was like 13 of us that were being, prosecuted, and they were trying to get us all at the same time, to our sentencing. And, that stuff just kept blowing up basically. So it just kept getting pushed farther and farther. Then there was COVID. So yeah, that was hanging over my life. I'd got stable on my meds. I became a totally different person, but I'm still not able to live my life because of, that. So that's the other hardest thing, that I ever went through was having to deal with that. But to get back to your question, what I found, I guess, that kind of really helped me is in going through all this, I finally realized that my purpose is to help other people that are struggling by sharing my story. So that's what kind of helped me get through all these lows is, I knew one thing I always tell myself is now isn't forever. And I knew, eventually I didn't know how, but I knew I was going to use my story to help other people. So that, having that clear purpose and vision in my life really kind of helped me get through the toughest times. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to start sharing on social media, do speaking, coaching, whatever I can really do. So I started to do that, even before my sentencing, because my sentencing wasn't until December of 24, December of last year. But I was already starting to try to help people, with my story before that. And I think that's what's really that the meds and, just really putting in the work are like the main things that have kind of propelled me forward.
So take me through like a day in the life right now
Mhm.
of David Funes. Take me through it. You wake up. Where are you living?
I live in Austin, Texas now.
You're still in Austin.
Yeah, so I can take you. Yeah, so first of all, so I just went back to a sales job. Before that, I was kind of promoting my book and more doing that. But I still need, that's not paying the bills fully. So right now, it's kind of funny actually. Here's a day in my life.
I want to hear it. I'm so
Um,
excited.
so because I have my criminal background, I can't work in finance anymore, right? So I went from, making a bunch of money in finance. I had to take a delivery driver job last year. So I was, making like 20 bucks an hour. I've been able to get a sales job since then, but basically it's cold calling business owners. So I thought of the irony of today. The irony of today is I'm cold calling business owners who don't want to talk to me. Then I go jump on a podcast with Adrianna Costa, who does want to talk to me. It's
Talk to you.
it's such an ironic life. And then I'm going to go back to
How
calling people again after.
how's that for a weirdly odd symbolic moment? Right, for you. And I love
Yeah.
how you phrased it too.
It can only make you laugh at the irony of life. I mean,
But I know you're going to turn this into something else because of who you are.
yeah, it's already on the way there. I think you have to have a really s- strong belief in, I have a very strong belief in myself. Things are, and I've seen so much good things happen. I know this is very temporary situation, but sometimes you got to do whatever you got to do, to pay the bills. But yeah, I think it's good to poke fun. Sometimes I try to find the humor, in situations.
That keeps us young
Yeah.
and that keeps us going. And like there's so many times well, hopefully not all the time, but like where I'll get into a dark headspace and I'm like, I'm craving something funny. I need to laugh. I need to get out of my own headspace. I mean, it is like the most important thing in the world to kind of get out of your own head and into something else. Like watch a comedy show. You
Mhm.
know, Amy Schumer always does it for me. It's
Yeah.
like just whatever it does to make you smile and laugh. I swear it just like starts sending. I don't know if this is scientific, but I imagine it sends endorphins to your brain.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, humor
you
has
know,
been huge for me. I'm a huge advocate of humor. For instance, when I was delivering boxes for Amazon, I would write jokes while I was driving, and
right? Because were you going to do stand up? You were
I
going to
did
do
stand
stand up.
up a couple of times. A lot of my videos have humor in them, but I was like, my biggest fear was comedy. So I was like, I'm going to go ahead and do it. But all my comedy is self-deprecating, like riffing on my life, my bipolar and all that. I mean, it's really what I kind of riff on. But yeah, like it's just in my mind, I was, there was people there was a homeless guy. There's a guy at my work at Amazon that used to be homeless, and he's delivering boxes, but he's like, I'm thinking about becoming homeless again because I hate this job so much. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I
Oh,
used to work.
yes.
Yeah, I
I
used to
love
work
it.
with finance, people in finance that want to get more rich. Now I work with ex-homeless people who want to become homeless. So,
More money.
just thinking about all that, I just had to laugh instead of, get down about it. So that's been a huge part of my recovery.
Are you dating? This is what I would
Um,
ask like all the celebrities. So I just have to ask you too. Do you date? What
yeah,
do you do?
it's I'm just so honest. So I do go on dates. I don't have a girlfriend right now, but like this is the hard part about dating for me, just to be real. As a bipolar person, this is where it gets hard, especially because my social media, I mean, you can pull up my account. It's Bipolar Guy Living Life. Like no girl's not gonna know I'm bipolar. So
Right. But that's great. You put it out there at the beginning.
yeah, you don't waste first date money, I guess, because people
Right.
know what you're about. So that's the good thing. But yeah, I feel like the main people that hit me up right now are a lot of other people, like a lot of bipolar girls, seem to reach out to me. So, I've gone out with them, with different people, but I'm not normally actively looking, I guess. But if someone hits me up or if I meet someone out and about, that's good. But I don't do dating apps or anything like that. I'm more focused on, like my purpose in life. But if someone comes along, I'll definitely I'm open to it.
Do you think you want to have kids?
I think so. The only fear that I have is there's a chance they'll be bipolar too, because bipolar can definitely be genetic. Like one of my siblings is also bipolar, so that's my only fear. But yeah, I think meeting
How
the
does your
right
sibling
girl is most important, and then from there, if she wants kids, we can talk about that.
how does your sibling do with the diagnosis?
He's not. It's not as bad for him, I guess, because he's bipolar 2 is what it's called. So he gets hypomania, which is not the crazy mania where you blow up your life. It's just like it's much more minor, but his depression gets really bad. So he struggles with depression a lot. But it's a little different than mine because he doesn't have the crazy mania. But at least I'm
So,
able to kind of help him and be there for him because I've been through it.
and but you don't really hit those episodes anymore, it sounds like, just because of how well you're being monitored and taken
Yeah,
care of.
being on the meds and then being self-aware and putting all those habits and safeguards in place. I haven't had a major episode in over 7 years.
That's unbelievable. So you live a quote normal life in that sense,
Yeah. If I went off my meds, I would probably go off the rails again. But yeah, being on my meds, I live a pretty normal, good
but
life.
you don't want to do that, right? You would never do that again.
I don't want to do that. I People hear some of my stories and think they sound great, but I'm like, you don't understand how bad the lows were, and the lows last longer. Also, I mean, so yeah, just having a peaceful, stable life. I'll take that over the highs and lows.
That's my last sort of question is you've lived through it all, like the mania, the dark times, the redemption. And what if you could picture peace right now? Like what does that look like for you in a sentence or two?
Yeah, to me, peace is really like I just think of it. I think peace is a inner thing, and I guess with that, I believe in protecting my peace. So it's not letting things that bring anxiety into my life. So we talked about dating earlier. I'm very careful about who I bring into my life. Do they and really just people in general, friends, everything in my life I look at through the lens of, does this bring me more peace or less peace? So I think that's how I kind of protect my peace, is just looking at every area of my life. And if some, just as an example, even getting up in the morning, I don't try to look at my phone for 30 minutes. And I try to, be set aside certain times to be on social media. I've kind of just found being on social media too much doesn't give me peace. So at the end of the night, I'll watch a movie or TV instead. So but I think that's different for each person. But again, it comes back to self-awareness and realizing what's in my life that gives me peace, what doesn't. For me, my relationships with family and friends who I love and trust, my relationship with God, is a big source of my peace. But yeah, I think those are the main things, is kind of just finding what in each person's going to be different, but those are some things that do it for me.
Are you happy?
That's a great question. I am, yes, I'm happy. But I'm also very hard on myself. I don't know if you're the same way too. Like,
Very much so.
okay, so you understand, like, so that's kind of a tough question. But if someone asked you that, that might be a tough question too, right?
I like to say, like, I'm really content right now because
Yes.
if my brain feels healthy, if I'm good mentally, and I'm like, listen, balance is not a real thing. Things fall through the cracks, but we strive for it, right? But I feel if I'm content and at peace, I'm good. Like, that's all I want is just to be like, be able to breathe and feel content. And yes,
Yes.
then I'm
Yeah, on that in that standpoint, I am happy because I have peace like I haven't had in years. I am content. But then there's another part of me, and I think it's a good thing also, but I have these very lofty goals. So so when it comes to those type of things, I never want to settle. But if we're talking inner happiness, I have inner happiness, but there are a lot of huge goals I have in my life. So I'm not going to stay content with that. But inner peace and joy, yes, I am happy.
I think we need to keep striving, right? You got to look forward to other things
Yeah,
because if not, then you get stagnant. And I'm
for sure.
always thinking of the ahead, but I want to just keep it at bay so I don't make myself nuts. Because yes, we're hard on ourselves. It's never enough as far as my level of production. I
Yeah.
want to do more, 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 and more. And it's like, take a beat.
It's two sides of the
You
same coin though, because you that's what makes you successful also is it can be difficult mentally, but I know that's probably what makes you successful, and that's what makes me successful is that drive. And it can be difficult to shut it off, but you really can't, you can't have one without the other.
bulldog tenacity. It's
Yeah.
important. It's good. And then we need to be kind to ourselves. All
Yes.
right. Manic in Miami. Everybody should read this. It's a quick read. It's so nice having you on the show, David. I was so looking forward to this, and I thank you so much for sharing your story.
No, thank you for having me on. I've been really looking forward to doing it as well. So yeah, thank you very much.